tape 11 is on word problems or stated problems. Now what I wish to do in these set of word problems is to show you how to work them when you have two equations sometimes with two unknowns. Now a few of the problems I'm going to continue to work with one equation, one unknown. And so I want you to see how we use both of these. So let's look at the first example. First one says the sum of two numbers is 44. If the larger number is 3 times the smaller number, find the smaller number. See, the sum of two numbers, you see you need to read the problem several times until you're sure what it's saying. It says the sum of, so we're going to add two things together, and the word is usually means an equal sign. So the sum is we're going to have something plus something equals 44. All right? Now it says that the larger number is 3 times the smaller number. Well, generally, that says what we want to do then is let x be the small and it says, let's see, the larger number is 3, well, let's see. So we can say that 3x is the larger number. Find the smaller number. Well, okay, we'll go back. Now let's go back. It says what? The first sentence says the sum of the two, there's the two numbers. The sum of the two numbers is 44. Therefore, x plus 3x is 44. And so you have 4x is equal to 44, and so x is equal to 11. Now always keep in mind what you've been reading. It says the sum of the two numbers is 44. The large one is 3 times the small one. So 3 times this. So the large one is 33, or 3x is equal to 33. There are the two numbers. Now what do they add up to? 44. Now again, on the task tests, you got to watch what your choice is. So what that says is reading the problem. The question is find the smaller number. So your answer to check is then 11. So again, pay attention to the words and don't just write down numbers and say, okay, when I get to this point right here, I'm through. Not necessarily. If the question had asked what the larger one is, then you would have had to answer 33. So don't just write an equation down, go solve it and stop. Make sure that you read the question. It says the sum of two numbers is 44. The larger is 3 times the smaller. Find the smallest number. All right, let me show you how we could work this same problem using two letters. So we could have done this. Let x be the small one, let y be the large one. Or it doesn't make a difference. Y could have been the small one, x could have been the large one. Now let's go back and read the problem again. The problem says the sum of the two numbers is 44. Well, there are the two numbers, so the sum of the two numbers is 44. The word is usually means an equal. The word of usually means multiplication. Less than means subtraction. Sum means addition. Those type of words. All right, now let's read the second sentence. It says, if the larger number, that's y, if the larger number is 3 times the smaller. Again, the word is gets equals. It says the larger number is 3 times the smaller. So now we have two equations and two unknowns to solve. How do you solve those? Well, hey, this is a substitution method. You already have the y equals right here, so let's just go place that in there. So we have x plus 3x is equal to 44, and if you notice, we're back to the same problem we've previously worked. All right, let's look at the next example. Problem 2. Says Susan decides to invest $5,000 in 2 different savings certificates. All right, those are 2 different things. So let's let X be one of the savings certificates, and let's let Y be the other one. They'll continue to read. One yields 4% interest per year, the other yields 6% interest per year. Now let's stop and think. What does 4% interest mean? Well, how much money, if you put $1,000 and you get 4% interest, what does that mean? It means you're going to multiply the 4% times the amount of money. Okay? All right, continue. The other yields 6%, so that'd be 6% times the other amount of money. And then the question, if total yield from both certificates in 1 year is $244, how much did she invest at 4%? Well, wait a minute. Let's go back and read it again. If the total yield from both certificates in 1 year is $244, what does that mean? Well, that means if I take the 4% of one certificate, take that much money, that's how much I'm going to earn, and then add it to the 6% of the other amount, then that total is $244. So basically, let's look then at what you do. What you do is this. You take the percent times the amount of investment. Percent times amount of investment, and that's going to equal to what you earn. Okay? This is how much it's going to, how much interest that you're going to have, how much money you're going to earn. All right. So our question then is 4% of the amount plus 6% of the amount is $244. Well, these 2 things are different things. So let's start the problem now kind of officially. What we would say then is X is the first certificate, the amount you need to understand, the dollars of the first certificate, and Y is the dollars of the second certificate. Now, what are our equations? Our equations are, well, I'm going to just talk to you. You don't have to look back, but I'm just going to say that the problem says, Susan decides to invest $5,000 in 2 different, well, that means these 2 amounts is equal to $5,000. This amount of money in one certificate plus this in the other certificate is equal to $5,000. Now we use our percent amount equation. So we're going to take 4% of X and add to 6% of Y, and that's going to give us $244. And there's your 2 equations. Now don't forget, when we finish this, the question is, how much did she earn at 4%? So what we want the final answer is, what is X equal to? What is the value of X equal to? And you, again, on the task test and things like that, you've got to watch out. Don't give the 5,000. They might give the choice. They might give 244 choice, or they might give what the Y value would be when you get it. What you must remember is to read the question and find which one of these numbers is the one that they want for their answer. All right, now let's take and solve these two. What do? Well, we multiply the top and bottom so that we can get rid of one of the letters. So let's multiply the top by minus 0.04. We'll multiply the top by minus 0.04, and then we'll add and get, well, no, let's don't do that. Because if we do that, look what happens. We get rid of the x's, and we solve for y, and that's not the one we want. What let's do is to get rid of the letter we don't want or don't need and find the one we're looking for. So that means we need to multiply the top by minus 0.06. So let's look at it here. Multiplying by a minus 0.06, we get a minus 0.06x minus 0.06y is equal to, now 0.06 times that is minus 300. All right, underneath that is 04x plus 0.06y is equal to 244. Adding those, we get a minus 0.02x. Adding these, we get a minus 56. Okay, and dividing both sides by minus 0.02 by minus 0.02, we get x equals 2. All right, now this is where you have to go back and use dividing decimals into things. And what that will come out to be is $2,800. So that says that the investment in one certificate, the one at 4%, was $2,800 out of the $5,000, and then $2,200 was invested at the 6%. Well, you need to check your work to make sure, okay? Because again, like I said, on exams, they're liable to put the $2,200 over there for a choice and the $2,800. So we need to check our work. So what we're going to do is go right in here at this equation and check our work. If we take 4%, so we would take 0.04 times the 2,800. All right, and 4 times 28 is 112. So that would be $112. And 6% of 22 would be $132. So $132 plus $112 does add up to 244. Therefore, we worked it correctly. All right, let's go back and look at the problem one more time, and I want you to see something that we're going to use some more. And that's this. It says percent interest yields so much money, and you invest so much money. What you need to do, always remember that when you work these kind of problems, percent times the amount of money you're going to put in the bank is going to give you how much you yield, or how much you earn, or how much you receive in interest. And if you do 2 or 3 of those certificates, then you just add them up. It's percent times how much money you put in the bank plus the percent times how much money you put in the bank, and so on, and that's going to equal to how much money you receive. Now, hear that, keep that in mind. Now let's look at the next example, problem 3, and to see how similar it is to the same type of thing. Problem number 3. This is what is called solution problems. It says, how many pints of 40% salt solution must be added to 10 pints of 80% salt solution to dilute the solution to 50%? A lot of work, but here's all there is to that. It simply says the percent solution times the amount plus the percent solution times the amount is going to equal to percent times total amount. Now what this is going to be the sum of this plus this. For instance, let's think of an example like this. You have your radiator in your car has some antifreeze in it, and what you want to do is to know how much more you need to add to get a 80% solution. What you're saying is, I've got, let's say, 20% solution already in there for 40 quarts. And how much 100% solution, so you'd put 100 here, of pure antifreeze would get it up to 50% of what? Now, wait a minute. You already had 40 quarts in there. So over here, this is going to be 40 plus X. It's going to be 40 plus this. This is how much is one solution added to the other solution. These two amounts are supposed to add up to what this is over here. All right? So let's go back and read the problem now and plug in numbers. It says, how many pints of 40% solution, salt solution? Well, let's see. So we're going to put 40%, and here we don't know how many pints that's going to be. And that's going to be added to, need you add them, added to 10 pints. Well, that 10 goes here for amounts of an 80%, and that's going to equal to a 50% solution. Now, what is the sum of these two? So it would be 10 plus X. And that's how you work a solution problem. Very, very simple. If you'll just memorize that you do percent times the amount plus percent times the amount, and that's equal to percent times the sum of these two amounts. All right, finishing the problem. 40% changed is 0.4 times X. This is 0.8 times 10. This is 0.5 times 10 plus X. So this is 0.4X plus 8 is equal to 5 plus 0.5X. And now we're back to solving linear equations. So how do we do that? Well, we get all the x's on one side and the numbers on the other side. So this is the largest x, it's positive, so we'll move this across by doing the opposite operation. We'll move this 5 across by doing the opposite operation. And so what we have is 3 on this side and 0.1 x on this side. To solve for x, how are these two connected? By multiplication. Therefore, we divide by 0.1. Divide by 0.1. And so x is equal to 30. Now, here again is why we teach dividing by decimals. You need to know how to divide by decimals. One way of doing it is to say, all right, I want 3 divided by 0.1. So I move the decimal place over one place. That means I have to move it over one place here. And now 1 into 30 is 30. Another way of doing it is 0.1 is the same as 1/10. If you divide by fractions, you do what? You invert and multiply. So inverting, the 10 would be up here times 3. Just make sure you know how to divide by decimals when you get into these type of problems. All right, let's look at one other example. Problem 4, the notes. Says, a rectangle has a perimeter of, rectangle. Well, the first thing you should do is to draw a figure. When they give you something that deals with some kind of a figure, square, rectangle, triangle, go draw it and do some kind of labeling. So, rectangle, we usually call this one side the length, one side the width. All right, let's finish reading the problem. A rectangle has a perimeter of 220 feet. If the length, its length is 20 feet longer than its width. Find its width. Oh, wait a minute now. All right, a rectangle has a perimeter. Well, what's the perimeter of this? Well, it's this one, plus this one, plus this one, plus this one. So, let's see, this would be the length, and this would be the width. So, 2W plus 2 length is 220. Okay? First sentence says, a rectangle has a perimeter of 220. So, draw the figure and label it. Then it says, its length is 20 more than its width. Okay, let's see now. We need to make an equation there. Width and an equal and a length. Now, which one do we have to add 22 to make it equal? Now, this is where a lot of students will foul up by just being careless. It says its length is 20 longer than its width. Well, hey, let's use our words. Its length is. Its length is. There's our equal sign. 20 more than its width. Now, if you don't see that, stop the tape, back it up, replay this, and just keep replaying these words till you see the equations. That's what you should do on all these stated problems. All right, so we have two equations, two unknowns. Let's solve those now. All right, well, the first thing to do is to write this one down again and then rewrite this, moving it across. So this will be W minus L is equal to minus 20. What I'm doing is moving the L across, moving the 20 across. Or you could use substitution method. L is equal to this, so you could go take that and substitute it right there. Whichever method you like doing, okay? And I'll do both of them. I'm going to finish this one up. Okay, we have two equations, so we need to do what? Multiply this equation by 2. So it'll give us 2W, 2L, and 2 times this would be a minus 40. Now adding those, we get 4W. Over here we get 180. Dividing both sides by 4, we get W is equal to 45. So the width is 45. Hey, that's what we wanted also. The problem says find its width. Now again, be careful. Make sure you read the problem. The length is 65. Okay? The width is 45. We found what one we're looking for. All right. The other way that we could have done this is to come right back in here, looking back at this original equation, and put in W plus 20. And what would happen is this. Pay real close attention. This would have been 2W, so adding that would get to 4W. This would have been 2 times 20, which is 40. Moved across, be a minus 40, and you'll end up with the same equation. All right, now, what I want you to hear is what you do is read the problem and read the problem and read the problem and read it several times until you get in mind what you're doing. Then come down and write down things for letters, what you're going to do. What letters are you looking for? Label them or do something like that. Then go back and read the problem slowly and write your equations. Whatever the equation, word is, more than, longer than, you add, and so on and so forth. All right, let's look at some more. All right, looking at Problem 5 says Barbara, a salesperson, gets $200 per week salary plus 5% commission on her total sales for the week. If she earned $230 in 1 week, what were her total sales? Now let's go back now. Salesperson gets $200 per week salary. That's just a basic. She's going to get $200. All right, she's going to get plus that. So we're going to add to that 5% of. Okay, that means 5% times her total sales. Question is, what are her sales? So reading that several times, there's only one unknown. Okay, so that's going to be X is going to equal to what her sales will be. All right, well, let's see. Says she's going to earn $230. What does that mean? Think about, what are you going to get? Well, you're going to get $200 plus 5% of the sales, and that's going to equal to $230. See, a lot of students will want to read a problem and try to do this one just like a problem they saw in class or in a textbook, rather than thinking what they would do in real life. What you do in real life is, I want my $200, and then I'm going to take 5% of how much I sell, and I'm going to add that to it, and that's how much money I'm going to get for that week. And so that's how simple these are. If you'll try to read the question many, many times until you really have a feeling for what it's saying, just as if you were Barbara in real life, and what you would do, whether you're going to add or multiply things or whatever. All right, now working it mechanically, this would then be 200 plus 5% changed over, move the decimal place 2 places, so that's 0.05 times X is equal to 230. Subtracting 200 from both sides, moving it across, we now get 0.05x is equal to 30. Now dividing both sides by 0.05, these two are connected by multiplication, so we divide, and so this gives us x equals 600. Now then, remembering what x stands for, therefore our answer is $600 in sales. Okay, then you should remember to always check your work. And if you go take 5% of 600, I'm sorry, if you take 5% of 600, you get 30. So that's 30 plus 200 checks out. Now again, notice that you have multiple choice answers, and don't get caught on those, because what they'll do a lot of times is give you like right here, somebody might divide that in or multiply it rather and get 150 or things like that. So check your number back in the equation before you go over to check your final answer and say that's the correct answer. All right, let's look at the next example, problem 6. It says, in her chemistry class, Betty must mix 5 liters of a 20% sugar solution with some quantity of a 50% sugar solution to produce a solution, blah, 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 blah. Aha, this is one of those solution problems. So we've already talked about that. We don't have to read this one that many times. So it's percent solution times the amount plus percent solution times the amount is equal to percent solution times the amount. Now, if somebody said, I want to add pure water or pure sugar or pure something, then that percent is 100%. If you ever run across a problem like that, and they say they're just going to mix in a pure mixture, then that simply is 100%. All right, let's go back and read the problem now to figure out which numbers go where. It says, Betty must mix 5 liters of a 20%. All right, so we're going to put 20% of 5 liters All right, she's going to mix that or add that with some quantity. Well, that means unknown. That's 50%. And what she's going to get is a 40% solution. Now, 40% of what? Remember I told you, add these two together. So that would be 5 plus x. So what we have then is 0.2 times 5 plus 0.5 times x is equal to 0.4 times 5 plus x. Remember, changing the percent, you move the decimal place 2 places to the left. All right, now multiplying this times that is 1 plus 0.5x is equal to, this times that is 2 plus this times this is 0.4x. Again, moving things across, this is the largest x, it's positive, so we're going to move the minus 0.4x across. And if we get the x's on that side, then we want the numbers over here, so we'll have to add a minus 1. Okay, adding those, we get 0.1x. Adding these, we get 1. Now this is connected by multiplication, therefore we divide. And so we get x is equal to 10. So therefore we must say x is 10 liters of the mixture. All right, let's look at the next example. Now what I'm trying to show you, one thing, is how problems get mixed up. One might be with one letter and one might be with 2 letters. So we've kind of jumped back and forth, and you need to understand that. When you're working these kind of problems on a test, you don't get all right in a row being the same type of equation. So look at number 7. 10 bags of brand X fertilizer plus 6 bags, plus, that means we're going to add 6 bags of brand Y will cover 2,600 square feet, while 3 bags of brand X plus 1 bag of brand Y cover 700 square feet. How many square feet can be covered with 4 bags of let's go back. We've got 2 things in this, so okay. So we're going to have an X and Y in the problem, just like they give the letters X and Y. That's a nice hint. So let's read the first sentence and see what we can say. 10 bags of brand X. Okay, so let's look over here now as I work the problem. So it says we have 10 bags of brand X plus 6 bags of brand Y, and that will cover 2,600 square feet. Well, then it says, comma, while 3 bags of brand X, 3 bags of brand X plus 1 bag of brand Y will cover 700. Hey, that's great. We've got 2 equations, 2 unknowns. But let's keep reading the problem. It says, how many square feet can be covered with 4 bags of brand X and 4 bags of brand Y? Well, that's the question, so we're not going to write that as one of our equations. What that's asking is, if I can come up here and find what works for X and Y here, then I'll just multiply 4 times the number of bags of brand X and 4 times the Y, and it'll tell me the answer to the problem. So what I must do is solve these. So I have 2 equations, 2 unknowns. What we want to do then is to get rid of one of the letters. What would be the easiest one to do? We'll probably multiply this by minus 6 so that when I add, these will drop out. Okay. Doesn't make any difference how you get it, just get the job done. So what I'm going to do is write the first equation down, multiply the bottom by minus 6, so that's a minus 18x, a minus 6y, and a minus 4200. Now adding these, we get a minus 8x. Over here we get a minus 1600. And now how do we solve for x? This is connected by multiplication, therefore a divide. And so x is equal to 200. 200. No. Okay? So x is 200. What's y? Well, what we'll do is go back and plug it in one of the equations. So we'll go back and plug it in the equation, the second equation, 3x, so that's 3 times 200 plus y is equal to 700. So that's 600, move it across, y is equal to 100. Now, wait a minute. Let's stop and think what x stands for. We've got the solution. X is 200, y is 100. For that, it's not the final solution, you understand, but that's the solution for what x is standing for. What the 200 and the 100 stands for is how many square feet. Because that is what the problem was over here on this side. It said all this is going to equal to so many square feet. So then one bag of x will cover 200 square feet. One bag of y will cover 100. All right, problem number 8. Jeff borrowed $2,000 in 2 one-year loans. Okay, so he's got 2 loans. So we're going to let X be the first loan and Y be the second loan. So that tells us what? X plus Y is equal to 2,000. Now we go back to our percent amount. Our percent amount. So it says 8% of the X loan plus 10% of the Y loan is $176 interest charge. So we now have the problem to deal with to solve those equations. So let's look at how to solve those. So let's go erase this right here and work that. So I have these 2 equations. I want to get rid of one of the letters. So, well, wait a minute. First we need to rewrite it. X plus Y is equal to 2,000. And change this to decimal. So that's 0.08x plus 0.10y is equal to 176. So now what do we do? Well, let's multiply the top one by minus 0.10. So that's minus 0.10x, minus 0.10y is equal to 200, minus 200. Then we have 0.08x plus 0.10y is equal to 176. And when we add those together, this drops out and gives us a minus 0.02x is equal to a minus 24. So dividing both sides by minus 0.02, we get x is equal to 1,200. Well, then that means if there's 2,000 total, then that means the other amount, the other loan, was 800. So again, make sure that you read the problem. It says, how much did the 8% one do? Well, the 8% one's the x. So here are your 2 numbers, but your answer for your multiple choice is this one, because the question was, how much did he borrow at 8%? And the 8% is the one for x. All right, let's look at the next example, problem number 9. All right, it says his quiz average counts 40% of his final grade. His test average counts the rest. Well, what does that mean? That means 60%. So that means 40% of, 40% of what? Of his quiz grade, plus 60% of what? It says the rest, his test grade average, gives him his final grade. So what we want then is we're trying to find the test grade. So that's the X. So now let's look. What we have is 40% of the 75 plus 60% of the one we're looking for is to give us a final grade of 81. So now you go ahead and work this. This would be 0.4 times 75 plus 0.6 times X is equal to 81. 0.4 times 75 here is 30 plus 0.6X is equal to 81. Moving the 30 across, subtracting it, we get 0.6X is equal to 51. So X is equal to 85. So therefore, his test average better be 85. All right, looking at the next example. Now the next example is to teach you or to remind you of a formula that you're supposed to know about distance is equal to rate times time. Let's read the problem. Number 10 says airplane A takes 8 hours to travel from one airport to another airport. Airplane B, which travels 100 miles per hour more slowly than airplane A, requires 10 hours to complete the same trip. How fast does the that's a lot of words. Go back and read it again. Airplane A takes 8 hours to travel from one airport to another, so that distance is there from one airport to the other. Airplane B, which travels 100 miles per hour more slowly than A, requires 10 hours to complete the same trip. Same trip. Now what's the same in there? Is the speed the same? No. Is the time the same? No, one was 8 hours. Is the distance the same? Yeah, the distance is the same. So let's look at some things. First, what we want to do is say let X be equal to the speed of plane A. Now what speed is the same thing as rate, which is the same thing as miles per hour, or feet per second, or whatever units. In this problem it's miles per hour, because we're dealing with hours and miles. The next thing we need to learn is that the formula distance is equal to rate times the time. The distance traveled is equal to how fast you're traveling times the time that you take. All right, now the key to this problem is this, these type of problems. The key to these type of problems is to say something's equal and the distances are equal. So what we want to do now is to come back in here in this problem and do this. We're going to take the distance of plane A, and that's going to be the same as the distance for plane B. Now what is distance equal to? It's equal to the rate times the time. What is the rate of airplane A? The rate of airplane A is what? We don't know. That's the X. Now what is the time of airplane A? Going back and reading the problem, it says airplane A requires 10 hours. Okay? Airplane, I'm sorry, this is supposed to be 8 hours. First part of the problem says airplane A takes 8 hours to travel from one airport to another one. Okay. While airplane B, which travels 100 miles slower, requires 10 hours. So over here, for airplane B, is 10 hours. All right, now what's the speed of airplane B? Well, it says airplane B, which travels 100 miles per hour more slowly than A. Well, there's A, so then this would be 100 less than that. Okay, distance is the same. Distance is equal to rate times the time. Rate times the time. It says airplane A takes 8 hours to make that trip. Airplane B requires 10 hours to make that trip. The rate that airplane A, how fast it's going, we don't know. B says it's 100 miles per hour slower. And now we multiply out, we get 8x. Multiplying this times that is 10x. Multiplying this times that's a minus 1,000. And now we go solve. Move the 8 across, we get 2x. Move the 1,000 across, we get 1,000. And so x comes out to be 500. 500 what? 500 miles per hour. Okay, you probably need to rewind the tape and look at this one several times to get this one, because it's really different from any of the patterns we worked before. Let's go on now to the next example, problem number 11. It says Jim must rent a truck in order to move. Company A quotes him a price of $20 plus 35 cents a mile. Well, let's look at that. And that says Company A wants $20 plus 0.35 times the number of miles you're going to travel. All right. It says while Company B quotes $30 plus 25 cents for every mile that you're going to travel. Now it says, at what distance will the cost for each company be the same? At what distance? Well, the distance tells us that we were correct in letting x be the number of miles. And it says, at what distance will the cost? This is what the cost, $20 plus this. In other words, if you're going to go rent a car, they'll probably charge you so much dollars down, and then they're going to tell you they're going to charge you this for every mile that you're driving. So your total cost is how much you have to pay per day or have to put down to start with. Add to that how many miles you drive times a certain amount. And the question is, at what distance will the cost, at what distance, that's what we're looking for, will the cost be the same? So we set these equal. Okay, the x over here is a large one, positive, so we'll move this across. So we'll subtract 0.25x from both sides. And then if we've got the x's on this side, we want to move the numbers across. So we'll put the minus 20. And so we have 0.10x is equal to 10. Dividing both sides by that, we get x to be 100. And that's the answer. We only have one letter in the problem. We have found it. And so what does it represent? Okay. At what distance? So this is going to be miles. All right. That concludes then the problems, or what we call word problems. And it shows you kind of several different examples of how you read the problem and come up with the equations. What I'd like to do now is to show you how to work equations with many letters in them where you're solving for just a letter out of an equation. All right, this portion of the tape, I'm just going to show you how to solve equations that have a lot of letters in them and you're picking out a particular letter to solve for. Now, if you'll remember what I've discussed on how to do in tape 8, how to solve equations, and that is this. If I want to solve for W in this problem, then how are these things connected? Then I do the opposite operation. How are these two connected to W? They're multiplied, therefore I divide both sides. So I divide both sides. And so this divides out, and I just have the answer. Very, very simple idea, but the rule is whatever letter I pick out, then look at how everything else is connected. Do the opposite operation. And so there's your answer. All right, let's look at the next example here. Okay, this one we want to solve for W. Okay, we want to solve for W. This is the letter we're solving for. Well, how is everything connected to it? Well, this is times. Well, we don't want to do it yet because there's some things added. So this is added. So we're going to get everything else to the other side. So what we need to do is subtract this from both sides. Well, we can't subtract that from that, so we just have to write that down. So that's P minus 2L. In other words, those aren't the same letters, so we can't just put them together. We just have to write P minus 2L. This drops out. Now it gives us 2W. Now we're solving for W. How is the 2 connected? It's multiplied. Therefore we divide. So we divide. And so W is equal to P minus 2L all divided by 2. And that's how simple these are. If you follow the rule that simply says, how are these things connected? If it's added or subtracted, then you do the opposite operation. This is added. This is this plus this. So we subtract it from both sides. You can't subtract L from P, so you just have to keep it separated, P minus 2L. Then you look at this and say, how is this connected? Multiplication, therefore you divide. All right, let's look at the next example. Okay, the next example says area is equal to 1/2 base times the height. And on this one we want to solve for the base. Now, how are those things connected? Now, remember from tape 8, you have a denominator. If you have a denominator, you multiply everything through to get rid of that. So we're going to multiply everything by 2. So we'll get 2A is equal to B times H. Now, remember what we're solving for is B. How is the H connected? It's multiplied, therefore we divide. Divide. And there's your answer. Therefore, B is equal to 2A over H. All right, next example. All right, on this problem, we want to solve for B. Okay, so here we go again. We're solving for this letter. All right. So solving for B, how's this connected to all that? Don't look at the Y yet. We've got some addition over here. This is added, so we need to subtract that from both sides. All right, subtracting that from both sides, we cannot combine anything, so we just have to write it all down. And so it leaves us B times Y. Now we're solving for B, so how's the Y connected? It's multiplied, therefore we're going to divide. And when you divide, you just put a division sign underneath all that. So that's the answer. B is equal to all of that minus 3 minus C divided by Y. And you do not divide those Y's out, because that Y is divided into all of that. It is not just divided into that one. So don't you do any canceling or marking out. That's the answer. All right, let's look at another example. Okay, here we have a problem that's A is equal to 1/2 times H times the parentheses. Now in this problem we want to solve for this letter. So we've got to get rid of everything. Well, what's the first condition? First condition, we have a denominator. So let's multiply everything through by 2. And so we have 2a is equal to h times b plus c. What's the next condition? We have a parenthesis. So that's 2a is equal to hb plus hc. Now we're still solving for b, so that says move everything to the other side. Well, we need to subtract this from both sides. All right? So that gives us now 2a minus h times c is equal to h times b. In other words, I can't combine these, so I just write them down. Now I'm looking for b, so how is this connected? Multiplication, therefore divide. Divide, put a division sign underneath everything so that you will not divide that out. So the final answer, b, is 2a minus hc over h. All right, let's look at the next example. And this will be the final one. In this one, we're going to solve for q. We're solving for q. Okay. So to solve this for q, how is everything connected to it over here besides the d and q? It's added, so we'll subtract r from both sides. Right, so this is d minus r is equal to d times q. Now we're solving for q, and how's d and q connected? By multiplication, so we'll divide both sides by d. So q then is equal to capital D minus capital R divided by small d. All right, this shows you then how to work some equations like the tape number 8 had in it, where you have a bunch of letters, but it's still the same rule, and that is to move things across the equal sign, you do the opposite operation. And don't forget that when you move this across and these don't combine, these don't add, then you just write them down. Then when you're dividing from something over here, you divide the entire side over there. You divide everything by that letter. This concludes then this tape.